Problem solved.
There's no movie series that's given a voice to our mentals in quite the same way that Inside Out has. And at the heart of its second film is a character that's gotten all the smoke for everything that went wrong in Riley's head: anxiety. On one hand, it makes sense. She pretty much made everything worse with every choice she made. But does that make her the bad guy though? Rise up, GG Nation, cause it's time for Guidance Guide Friday, your weekly guidance lesson from your internet school counselor. And today I'm going to show that not only is anxiety not the big bad of Inside Out 2, but she actually can be useful to not just Riley, but to you. Let's go! It's guidance time!
Hello, everybody!
Let's be real here. Nobody likes anxiety, neither in the movie or in real life. We hate what it does to our mentals, how it feels in our body. Shoot, sometimes we even avoid things that activate it. But let's look at the actions that anxiety took in Inside Out 2, and let me show you how some of what she did was actually good. Let's take her first action in the movie. She just shows up out of nowhere and announces that HQ is her home now. Homegirl just pulls up unannounced and uninvited like the worst kind of house guest.
How rude.
But let's back it up for a sec. That's what the OG crew did. Go back to the first movie and you'll see that every single emotion shows up just like anxiety did. And if we're honest with ourselves, all our emotions just show up without warning. Sometimes we don't even know why we feel what we feel. And you know what? That's okay. Our emotions don't always make sense. Sometimes they're triggered by something in the past that we're not even thinking about in the moment. Other times we know exactly what activated that feeling center in our brain. You can't fault anxiety for doing what all the other feels do. And we gotta keep that same mindset when anxiety takes charge of the console. Sure, Joy gets offended by this newbie just showing up and doing work, but again, they all do that. If the occasion calls for them to do their thing, then they do it. Anxiety was just doing her job. But now is where my job as the president of the Anxiety Keeping Committee gets difficult. Cause how am I gonna defend anxiety messing around with Riley's sense of self by chucking it into the back of her mind? Well, two things. One, Joy made that machine in the first place. If her mind suppression device didn't exist, that wouldn't have happened and this movie would have been a lot shorter. So not completely on Agent Orange. But was her idea of ditching Riley's sense of self a good thing? Well, kind of. Stick with me here. Should you just delete your whole identity like a bad selfie? No. However, as we go through our life, our sense of self will need to change. Who we were as a baby isn't gonna cut it once we know how to talk and walk. So anxiety was onto something when she said that Riley needed to make a few changes as she got ready for high school. Again, not bulldozing the whole thing and starting from scratch, but a touch-up here and there was needed. But what about suppressing the main crew in the vault? Surely I can't defend that. Well, watch me cook on this one. Anxiety was right when she said that Riley needs more complex emotions now that she's older. As we go through life, a sign of maturity is being able to see things as more than just black and white, good or evil. Life is complex, and someone who realizes that and lives in that reality is better able to handle life than someone who doesn't. Now, locking her colleagues out was not the move, but again, anxiety was on the right track by accepting the challenges that Riley was living through and taking on the challenges that came with them. But let's get back to Ms. A's good points, like how she spurred Riley to practice early in the morning before camp. That's objectively smart. Any sports ball greats will tell you that part of their greatness was a willingness to be the first person in the gym, and if needed, the last one to leave. We also see anxiety's determination and willingness to sacrifice for the greater good, and we can all use some of that. BT dubs, our anxiety can work like that too, but more on that later. So we see that anxiety is determined, takes initiative, and isn't afraid to take charge. She's also a chess player, seeing the possibilities of what could go wrong and plans ahead to make sure things work out for Riley. All in all, anxiety is not all bad, but it's here I gotta look at the other side of anxiety. I mean, how could I be here glazing her up when so much of mental health is based on reducing and eliminating anxiety? Well, let's go there.
You have to score, Riley, or this will all have been for nothing.
You don't need me to tell you that anxiety has a bad side. For all of us who stayed up at night worrying about the problem awaiting us in the morning, or the fear that we know that doesn't make sense but still keeps us paralyzed, we know that all too well. But even as we look at anxiety's mistakes, we still see the glimmer of good intention. For example, starting to brainstorm to figure out how to make the Firehawks. Coming up with ideas to improve your situation and avoid disaster. That's exactly what anxiety wanted to do all along. It's something we should do too. But here's where our orange friend went astray. She focused so much on the negatives that she forced Riley's imagination to come up with every single bad thing that could go wrong. There's actually a word for this. Rumination. Riley's mind was so wrapped up in every bad ending for her camp, regardless of how realistic it was, it kept her awake at night. But this is just a movie though. That doesn't happen in real life. Again, anxiety did this to try to anticipate what could go wrong to be prepared for the worst. But just thinking about the worst thing that could happen without making a plan for it or even wondering if that thing is even possible will only make you miserable. And all this ruminating can make you self-conscious or hyper-aware of your actions to the point of being unsure of yourself. You know what you don't want to have happen, but you don't know how to prevent it. So you second-guess yourself and make things more difficult. That's what happened to Riley when talking with the Firehawks. She knew she still loved Get Up and Glow, but because she wanted to be accepted by the high schoolers so bad, she went from admitting to listening to them to straight up trashing them 2 minutes later. Anxiety in her attempt to give Riley what she wanted caused Riley to lose herself with endless negative thoughts and uncertainty about her own identity. And that led to Riley making sacrifices that she shouldn't have made. Anxiety motivating Riley to do those early morning workouts was a sacrifice that was making her better. But anxiety also motivated Riley to sacrifice her relationship with her friends and betray her values by sneaking into the coach's office. And those sacrifices are undefendable. And neither was the self-talk that anxiety built into Riley. Self-talk is the inner conversation that we have with ourselves about ourselves. And don't cap on me now, we all do it. Self-talk can be positive or negative. But listen for the self-talk that anxiety was giving Riley throughout camp and tell me you think this is helpful. If I'm good at hockey, I'll have friends. If I make the Firehawks, I won't be alone. On the surface, this all sounds motivational. As long as it goes your way, Riley fully bought into thinking that if she didn't make the Firehawks, she'd be alone and friendless going into high school. Which wasn't true, seeing how Val was willing to be her friend from day one. And when all that negative self-talk was the only things dominating Riley's mind, it became the core of a toxic sense of self. The part of herself that was saying that she wasn't good enough. That's why she felt like she had to work so hard, play so hard, and completely change herself. Because Riley now believed that she didn't have what it took. She had to earn approval, validation, the feeling of being worthy because she felt worthless without it. Which was a lie for Riley, and it's a lie for you. No one ever needs to earn respect, acceptance, or love. And if you find yourself doing that, then stick with me because we can fix that. And it's with this negative sense of self that we see Riley become someone we don't even recognize anymore in the scrimmage game. She played with energy, yes, but also with desperation and selfish play. And people with this kind of dark sense of self, they live selfishly and with desperation. They think they need to look out for number one because no one's gonna care about them unless they're worthy, unless they're good enough. They treat everything like their self-worth depends on it because in their mind, it does. People who live like that go by many names. Perfectionist, obsessed, narcissist. That's no way to live. Because in the end, when you put all this pressure on yourself, when you don't believe you're worth love and success by yourself, it can lead to a breakdown, or in Riley's case, a panic attack. And this is why we hate anxiety, because of all the problems that come when we let anxiety's dark side rule us, self-doubt, and negative thoughts that won't go away and cause us to not like ourselves. And believe me when I say that no one should live like this. No one deserves to live like this. And even with all of this still doesn't make anxiety the villain because we can use anxiety for our good. How? Stick with me.
I'm sorry. I was just trying to protect her.
So if anxiety isn't the big bad of Inside Out 2, then what is she? Let me ask you something. Say you have someone who's new at something, a job, game, whatever, and they're just trash. What do you call them? You'd call them a newbie, a rookie, a noob. That's what anxiety is at her core. Throughout the entire film, she says that everything that she did was to help Riley and help her get what she wanted. The problem with anxiety, though, was she often went too far. And because we too tend to let anxiety go too far in us, we tend to blame anxiety instead of using it to help us. Because just like with sadness in the first movie, where we learned that being sad has a purpose, so does anxiety. Throughout the movie, anxiety had a goal, saw potential dangers to that goal, and set out to get rid of said dangers. That's how it works in our life. Anxiety is like a weather forecast. It can tell you what might happen. It can be right or it can be wrong. Our job is to be prepared based on that forecast. And we can use a few tips to keep anxiety from going haywire in our own lives. 1. Question your thoughts. If your anxiety causes you to think about a million things that could go wrong and ruminate, ask yourself if what you're thinking can even happen. If it can't, then dump that thought and don't dwell on it. But if your worst case scenario is actually possible, then move on to the next step. Make a plan. If you have a test that's stressing you out, make a plan to study. Got a big game coming up? Give it your all in practice. Eat right and get rest. It all comes down to focusing on what you can control. Don't ignore your anxiety. It's not your enemy. Just be careful to not let it run you. It's anxiety's job to make the forecast, but they're guesses, not a prophecy. And lastly, work to embrace all parts of yourself. Not just the parts you like, not just the aspects that are ready for the socials, but the anxious, jealous, angry, and fearful parts as well. Because as Riley learned by the end, her emotions don't control her. She does. And we have to make the same choice. And the best way to do that is to learn from our bad memories. Don't stuff them or force yourself past them. Talk it out. Journal out your thoughts. Make sure you get them out so they can become part of your sense of self instead of rotting in the back of your mind. Live your life. Strive for excellence. Just remember that you are more than what you do. Be sure to love yourself, every messy, beautiful piece of you. And once you do that, you quickly realize that you were always good enough. So how do you plan to make anxiety work for you instead of against you? Let's see it in the comments. And don't forget to do the YouTube thing. Let's get this message out there. And if you want to go down the inside out rabbit hole, I've got another video on the first movie for you to check out. See you there. Guidance Guy out.